The Oklahoman Newsroom, this is an OSU update. I'm Jenny Carlson. Cowboys went to Waco on Tuesday, came away with a tough loss. Just a tough interior team are the Bears. And now Cowboys are on the road again on Saturday for a noon tip at West Virginia, the farthest of the Big 12 ports of call. And John Helsley joins us on the phone. John, obviously that Baylor team, big inside. We talked about it before the game, and it came to pass that it was just too much for the Cowboys' interior. What about this West Virginia matchup? How will it be similar? How will it be different than what the Cowboys saw in Waco?
Well, the Mountaineers actually rate one spot higher in the rebounding rankings than Baylor does. So a lot of the same storylines, some different storylines, obviously, as well. But you're right. You know, I'm curious to see, because that was, in a lot of ways, it was really an embarrassment. Rico Gathers almost out-rebounded the Cowboys by himself, 44-18 on the boards total. That's a terrible number, no matter what your situation is. So they get a Mountaineers team now that is very good rebounding team. They're a full-court pressure type team, so that's something that Oklahoma State hasn't seen much of this season that they'll have to contend with. West Virginia didn't shoot it great. But they do a lot of things to score and win games. They're 2-0 in the Big 12, and both of those are road wins. So it's definitely going to be a big time challenge.
You know, John, I mentioned how far West Virginia is, obviously, and I know teams go all over the place in non-conference, but to have a game as far as West Virginia is for the Cowboys, is there any consolation in the fact that this trip comes early in conference play as opposed to in the middle of a really tough conference stretch where suddenly you find yourself flying halfway across the country for that game at Morgantown?
That's a good point. And then there's this other point that Travis Ford made today. When you go to West Virginia, say on a Saturday, and then you have a big Monday game, that's when it's really bad as well. And they don't play again until Wednesday, which will be a bedlam game in Stillwater. So school's not in yet. They can fly in there tomorrow. Play a noon game, get home, have a little time off before they get back to business preparing for Oklahoma.
Yeah, definitely so. John, we talked about this before the Waco game for the Cowboys, but a continuing storyline, Phil Forte, his availability, it's looking less and less like he's going to play. And what that means long-term for this team, they've now been without Forte for almost the whole season. He's been gone for so long, but now that reality's setting in and the adjustment that the Cowboys are going to have to make and are now going to be permanent for the rest of this year, how has the team adjusted to this point, and what still remains, especially now that there's some clarity that Phil Forte is not going to be around the rest of this year?
Yeah, for a while there was always the hope, and I think they expected Phil to at some point make it back. But it's not the case. I mean, it's becoming very apparent now. He still can't even run. The elbow hurts him just running. So he hadn't been doing a lot of running. He's not in great basketball shape, and he still has pain and issues with the elbow. So won't be coming back. I think in some of the guys' minds, they've sort of started to transition. It affects roles on this team. They had a very defined, sort of mindset on who was going to be in what positions coming into the season, and that has gradually changed. And like you say, it'll have to permanently change now. And so, Jeffrey Carroll's a starter. He's actually played pretty good. He kind of fills that shooter's role at the perimeter, and he needs to be good out there because other than Carroll, they don't have a lot of perimeter threats. Tyree Griffin, the backup point guard, I think he gets more play because he's going to have to play the two some. And then they leaned heavily on Leighton Hammonds and Jeff Newberry to score more points because, Phil was their leading scorer and he was the leading returning scorer, and now he's gone.
John, I in no way want to insinuate that I think Phil Forte being out for the rest of the year is a positive in any way, but now that the rest of these guys know for sure, is there at least some clarity moving forward? Could that potentially at least mentally get these guys into a position where they fully accept some of these changes that they've already had to make with Phil Forte in the day-to-day status to this point?
You would think that the clarity of knowing now what maybe they didn't know 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago would definitely be a boost. Obviously, like you say, they'd rather have Phil Forte playing. but they've sort of been going along, at least for a while there, they went along thinking, well, at some point Phil's going to be back. At some point Phil's going to be back. And the reality is he's not. And so, yeah, I think that they can now say, okay, this is who I have to be, and this is who we have to be as a team going forward to try and have some success in the league.
Yeah, definitely. Well, they will be at West Virginia again, a noon tip on Saturday. West Virginia now ranked in the top 25, so definitely a chance to go on the road and get what would be a definitely hard-fought victory for this OSU basketball team. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.